Ahead for us this half hour, are we past the peak? A local infectious disease expert weighs in after some positive news when it comes to new cases of COVID here in western New York. Plus, leading the pack, big poll numbers today for Governor Kathy Hochul. What does this new survey mean in her run for a full term in office this November? And party on in the heart of America. The Bills headed to Kansas City this weekend and the Mafia planning something special. We'll talk with the organizer of Tailgate X. Thanks for being with us on today's Town Hall at 5:30. All this month, the spike in cases from the Omicron variant of COVID-19 has dominated so much of our lives. So many new cases, far too many deaths, and even for those who avoided catching the virus, a lot of new restrictions. So it's a relief that we are finally seeing the numbers go in the opposite direction. Erie County's 7-day case total per 100,000 people peaked at about 1,900 less than 2 weeks ago. Yesterday, it was down to 1,443 and dropping fast. We often see changes in hospitalizations lag behind the case count, and that may be the case here as well. This is hospitalizations for the western New York region. It's hard to see, but on the right side of your screen, there are signs that things are leveling off, no longer going up. However, we have not seen a significant drop in hospitalizations at this point. Joining us live to discuss is Dr. Thomas Russo, Chief of Infectious Diseases at UB's Jacobs School of Medicine. Dr. Russo, it's always great to get your insight on this. We've talked a lot over the past month about just how kind of shockingly fast our rates shot up in terms of new cases. But as we just showed there, it seems like it's dropping just as quickly, at least in Erie County. I know hospitalizations aren't doing that yet. We often see the lag. But what does all of this tell you about where we are right now with Omicron?
Data from South Africa, the UK, and even Canada has demonstrated that Omicron cases increase over 3 to 4 weeks. And then, although no one's really done with Omicron yet, the best data from South Africa, it looks like cases will decrease over the ensuing 4 to 5 weeks. So we've had 5 good days here in Erie County, and it's really quite hopeful. Keeping in mind with the caveat that those were a couple of weekend days, a holiday, and a big snowstorm sort of packed in there in between. But nonetheless, it's encouraging. As you pointed out, though, Michael, we still have over 1,000 cases per day, which is almost certainly an underestimate. And hospitalizations and deaths, unfortunately, are still up. And as you mentioned, lag as well. So Omicron is not yet done with us. But I am cautiously optimistic, not quite grounds for celebration. But having said that, we need to carry on with those public health measures we know will minimize the likelihood of infection so we could really decrease the damage due to Omicron over the next few weeks.
I want to ask you something that Dr. Anthony Fauci told the World Economic Forum yesterday. He said that it's, quote, an open question of whether Omicron will be the end of the pandemic. Of course, we've talked about this theory that, enough people catch this plus vaccination and then it's lessening severity, that maybe this is what transitions us into a virus that we can live with at least. How much of a possibility is that, or does it really just depend on how this thing continues to mutate?
To make the shift from pandemic mode to endemic mode, our best guess right now is we need about 90% plus of the population to have a sufficient degree of protection from the circulating variant due to either prior infection or vaccination. And I think by the time we're done with this Omicron wave, we're going to be there. However, the fly in the ointment is, of course, as long as people are getting infected with SARS-CoV-2 around the globe, there's always a possibility that a new variant could arise that would evade that hard fought for immunity. So hopefully that won't occur, but that remains to be seen.
We've dramatically increased our testing capacity if you look where we were maybe a year ago even, but it has not kept up with Omicron and the just crazy demand for tests. We talked about the difficulties. There is a bit of good news on that front. The federal website is now up and running a day early. It's www.covidtest.gov. Every American household can now go online and get 4 free at-home test kits delivered right to your house. They'll be shipped 7 to 12 days from now. No charge for delivery. You don't have to put a credit card in there or anything to place your order. Again, covidtest.gov is the website. I wonder, Dr. Russo, do you recommend that everybody go ahead and go online and do this? And then what should you do when the tests arrive?
I do, and free is always nice, right? Testing is important for a couple of reasons. First, if you test positive for COVID, then you need to go ahead and isolate and minimize interactions with others, and that will help decrease the transmission of infection moving forward. Secondly, if you're a high-risk individual, the diagnosis of COVID may enable you to qualify for some outpatient treatment, which can significantly minimize the chances you'll develop severe disease. So having home tests in hand will expedite the whole testing process. The sooner you know where you stand, the better to enact those measures that we discussed. However, it's important for people to keep in mind that these home tests will be rapid antigen tests. They're not optimally sensitive, so if positive, you almost certainly have COVID. But if they're negative, that does not exclude the possibility, and you need to either do some serial tests or get a PCR to sort out exactly where you stand.
Yeah, at least every household's going to get 4 of them. Finally, Dr. Russo, there's this Kaiser Family Foundation survey of unvaccinated adults, kind of asking, why are you unvaccinated? And half of them, almost half, say that nothing at this point could convince them to get the jabs. Another 12% said more research and transparency would do it. Smaller numbers citing mandates, financial rewards, doctor recommendations, and if it prevented all infections. The question is, would you say that we've maybe reached the point where everybody who's going to get vaccinated has been, or if you think there are still, some out there who may do it, what needs to be done?
Yeah, I hope we're not done with getting people vaccinated, Michael. It's the best measure to really put this pandemic to an end. And it's important for people to realize that Omicron is still a potentially lethal virus. For example, 13% of our seniors, which are extraordinarily vulnerable, are yet to be vaccinated. So moving forward, I think it's critical, if you're not yet vaccinated, to reach out to someone that you trust, who is willing to listen to, understand, and address your concerns. I'm not really willing to give up on these individuals yet, Michael. Every individual that's vaccinated is a potential life saved.
Dr. Thomas Russo is Chief of Infectious Diseases at UB's Jacobs School of Medicine. It is always great to talk to you, Doctor. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure, Michael.
All right, to state politics now, and the race for governor of New York in Decision 2022. We are quickly approaching it. Kathy Hochul has been the front runner in polls ever since she took over when former Governor Andrew Cuomo resigned last year. And Hochul's lead is only growing. Her camp thrilled with a new survey out this morning. This is from Siena Research Institute, and it found 46% of registered New York State Democrats said that they'll vote for Hochul if the primary were held today. That's up from 36% a month ago. Back then, though, her closest competition was Attorney General Letitia James, who has since left the race. The second place contender in today's poll, you can see, is former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Just this morning, he announced he is also not running. So that leaves New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams at 11% and Long Island Congressman Tom Suozzi at only 6%. Siena pollster Steve Greenberg says it is clear that a lot of voters who preferred the AG James before now pick Hochul.
Now we'll have to see what happens to the de Blasio piece, which is at 12, and where that goes. But right now, Hochul's at 46. So she's not at that magic 50 point, but she's getting close. And so next month when we look, it'll be a 3-way race. You'd have to say, given the budget situation that the governor unveiled today, that she's adding money for programs, not making cuts, which is always harder for politicians to have to do. The fact that it got unveiled today that she's got more than $20 million in her campaign fund. The fact that she is, although only for 5 months, the incumbent governor, she has the bully pulpit of incumbency, the power of the office, which she demonstrated with her budget today. So you really have to say she is in a very, very strong position.
At the same time, this poll also asked all registered New York voters if they think the state is headed in the wrong direction or right direction. You can see 43% say the right direction, 41% say, or 43% say wrong direction, 41% say we're on the right track. So that may be spelling some trouble for Hochul. Steve, though, says that there's a big bipartisan split on that part of the poll, and he says another question gives us a different picture. Listen.
What we ask voters is, if Hochul wins the June primary and is the Democratic nominee for governor, all things being equal, would you vote to elect Hochul as governor in November, or would you prefer someone else? And right now, 48% say they would elect Hochul, 36% said they would prefer someone else. So above water by 12 points. And a major improvement from last month. Last month, 42% said would elect her. 39% said they wanted someone else. So went from a 3-point over water to 12 points.
And Hochul's favorability rating is also positive. 45% said they had a favorable view of her versus 29% unfavorable. Interestingly, for someone who's been in office now for quite a few months, a quarter of people said that they don't know or have no opinion of Hochul at this point. Steve points out, though, that this is registered voters, not necessarily likely voters.